Welcome to Fight Week on 5, brought to you by the 5 Reasons Sports Network. On my right, we have Alf Artiaga, the fight genius himself. How you doing, my friend?
Great.
Awesome. And I'm Jonathan Ramlakan, a.k.a. Three-Piece Combo. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in this week. It's a big week. You know, we got Conor coming back. The biggest name in the sport is returning to take on Dustin Poirier, which I believe is his toughest challenge yet. But before we get to that, I want to take a quick look back at last week and just take a quick look at Max Holloway's performance. How did you feel about his performance last week?
I felt he was back, and I'm one of those that felt that he actually won his second fight against Volkanovski. So I felt it was redemption. I felt he needed this to get him back into the spotlight, I would say, and I think he got every bit of what you could have wanted. If you're a Max Holloway fan, he's back into every conversation. People are talking about him fighting Conor if Conor gets past Poirier. So it's sky's the limit after that performance. It was a great performance. And I have an interesting stat, and I heard Joe Rogan talking about it, looked it up, and it's actually the truth. You know who holds the UFC record for most strikes landed?
I was actually
in
going
a
to bring
fight.
that up. Yeah, Holloway broke that record, and he now has that record.
Yeah, and you know who's second?
Khabib, ground strikes.
No, Max Holloway. You know who's third?
Max Holloway.
Max Holloway. He owns the top 3 spots. So, yeah, I think the next step is headlining a main event. And, he doesn't need a belt. I think he's one of those guys. I think he's an attraction. I don't think he needs a belt, but I would like to see him fight Volkanovski again. Well, if Volkanovski gets past Ortega, of course.
Right. Yeah, definitely. That's definitely what he is now. He is one of the biggest names in the sports, and he just showed out, especially with that being the first card on ABC. The things that he did in that fight was just ridiculous. He was able to just outbox him in the first 4 rounds, and then in the 5th round, he started to feel his groove, and he started to talk to the commentator's booth, and he was looking away and slipping punches, and then threw a straight right, a no-look straight right like Rajon Rondo, and he hit it perfectly, and it was just the best Max Holloway I've ever seen. And just to add on to your point about some records, just to read some off, he landed 445, breaking his other one, which was 290. Broke the record for most strikes attempted, which is 746 strikes. And he also broke broke the record for the most strikes in a round. In round 4, he landed 141 significant strikes. In one round, he outlanded both Israel Adesanya and Yoel Romero in their fight that they had for that championship. So Max Holloway really is a volume fighter. That fight could have been stopped a little bit early, but shout out to Calvin Kattar. He's a Boston guy. He's not going to go out, with a corner stoppage. He's going to go out on his shield. And, speaking to his performance, do you think he deserves a title shot after Volkanovski versus Ortega?
Oh, absolutely. If I were him, I wouldn't accept anything else. Unless, of course, Conor looks good this weekend and they offer him Conor, then that's exactly who he wants to fight, because that's a big money fight. That's a main event anywhere in the world. And if we weren't in COVID times, that could fill up a stadium. So, you could go to Ireland and fill up a soccer stadium if you wanted to for something like that. And that's a fight that you could talk about and you can promote months out and get a big pay-per-view price for and get a huge live gate for. So, yeah, anything less than a title shot has to be something like Conor,
right,
in a big venue. Other than that, no.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, he 50-42'd Calvin Kattar, who was one of the best up-and-coming guys and who other MMA professionals were picking to win this fight. And we spoke about it last week, and I told you this was going to be a much easier fight for Max Holloway than the betting line stand, which they were, probably like plus 150 and then minus 140 or something like that. But he just put on such a masterpiece. Like you said, other than a fight with Conor McGregor, which he wanted to be the backup for this fight, I think he deserves a title shot. He showed that he's a level above everybody else. But there has been, between two guys, created 3 of his 6 losses, and those 2 guys are fighting this Saturday night. Where, like we said, we're going to see the return of Conor McGregor, and he's coming on to take on Dustin Poirier. Now, their last fight was just over 6 years ago. How do you think these fighters have grown up since then?
Well, you never really forget, right? Like you always remember, when you were in the octagon with him again. So they're going to see things that are kind of similar. but Dustin Poirier couldn't be any more different. He was a little bit more. I would say I wouldn't call him more aggressive, but unschooled 6 years ago. Now you can see after his fight with Gaethje, I felt that he grew up exponentially because he was always a guy that he would fight you southpaw and kind of lean in and lead with his forehead and eat jabs. He doesn't do that anymore. After fighting a guy like Gaethje and then looking good as lately, I forgot who was it that. What was this fight? Because Dan Hooker, his fight against Dan Hooker was
Mm-hmm.
good, but yeah, okay, the Eddie Alvarez fight, I have it right here. When he fought Eddie Alvarez, I thought that was when he looked at his best and when he actually did take a pretty significant jump up, and that was after his fight with Gaethje. So I think he's a completely different fighter, different striker. So he's not going to be easy pickings for a counterpuncher like Conor. He's gonna bring it, and he might even do some counterpunching of his own, trying to induce some exchanges with Conor.
Yeah, I can definitely see that happen. I mean, both fighters, you look at Conor McGregor, after his fight with Poirier, he became a double champion. He beat Aldo. He boxed Mayweather. He beat, Nate Diaz, Eddie Alvarez. And he fought Cerrone, obviously, on a little bit of end of his career, but he's beat a lot of guys. And Conor McGregor back then, compared to Conor McGregor now, is just an enormous difference because he's just a major superstar now. He's the biggest name in the sport, and everybody knows who Conor is. He's like Michael Jordan or Muhammad Ali. You know what I mean? One of those guys that stick out in
Mm-hmm.
the sport and that's everybody's going to want to remember for a long time. But also, you got to take a look at what Dustin's done since his fight. He beat Max Holloway. Like you said, he beat Justin Gaethje. He beat Eddie Alvarez, which is another fight that Conor McGregor also beat. He beat Dan Hooker and he beat Anthony Pettis, and he became the interim champ. So if we had to compare the two paths between them, I would say Dustin has had the harder fights since they had their first meeting, and that Dustin
Mm-hmm.
has performed a lot better in his fights since those meetings. But enough with the past. We're getting on to the main event now. Who do you think today is the better striker?
Well, Connor is just magic, right? Connor's magic, but he's magic in a different way. He's not going to make things happen. Things are going to happen for him. His fight against Cowboy Cerrone was completely out of character, where he was kind of the aggressor. He's always been a guy that likes to take his cue off of what his opponent does. So it's going to be interesting to see how Dustin Poirier fights him because I've watched Dustin Poirier for a long time now, and he never really comes out the same. Although he used to when he did lose to Conor McGregor. Like I said, he used to lean over, ugly southpaw stance, leaning over with his forehead, eating jabs from everybody, which was a recipe for disaster against a guy like Conor. So I think it's going to be very different this time around. I think I don't know if he'll do so much as hunting as he'll try to box with Conor and try to induce Conor to do something else because Conor is actually the one who's changed a little bit as time has gone on. While he used to be more of a counterpuncher and now is becoming more of an aggressor, trying to get his offense early in fights. At least that's what he's shown in his last few fights. Dustin Poirier has become more technical as time has gone on. So I think that they're going to switch roles from the last time that they fought.
Yeah, definitely see that. Right now, the stats are really close. Looking at the stats, so Dustin has 5.5 strikes per minute. Conor is 5.4. Accuracy for Dustin is 50%. Conor is 49%. Accuracy as far as defense, striking defense, 55% to 54% for Conor. So it's razor thin in the margins as far as how these guys are going to strike. When it comes to striking overall, I think Conor has the better single punch or the single knockout punch. But I think overall, Dustin's complex and his variety in striking is kind of what's going to put him a little bit over. He's not just a straight boxer, even though he is one of the best boxers in the UFC. He'll take you in the clinch and he'll beat you up against the cage. He'll fire elbows. He'll fire knees. He has really a lot of diverse strikes that can be applied more applicably throughout the whole fight. And instead of like McGregor, where he's fighting his fight just staying a distance, and
Mm-hmm.
that's where he has to operate. So I think Conor definitely has the more power, but if I had to give the entire striking department to one guy, I would say it's Dustin Poirier. Now, getting into McGregor, do you think we're going to see a motivated McGregor, or do you think we're going to see the McGregor that just has money? He talked about having more money than Dana White in the press conference. Or are we going to see proper 12 McGregor? Which McGregor do you think we're going to see?
I think we're going to see a motivated McGregor because think about it. The boogeyman's gone, right? Khabib. He's no longer in the division. I think he sees a path to greatness once again. And he's talked about that before. He says he likes belts, he likes titles. He says that's what he fights for nowadays. He says that that's what he loves, you know. So yeah, I would say he sees an easier path now to a title once again. So I believe you're going to see a very motivated Conor McGregor. And I'm pretty sure he saw Max Holloway fight last week, and he's thinking about, you know what, this could be a pretty big fight because now that Max Holloway's made some more fans, especially on ABC, this could be a big one down the road. So yeah, I would say you're going to see a very motivated Conor McGregor.
And to add on to that point with Max Holloway is one of the few fighters that actually took Conor to a decision and didn't get knocked out by Conor. So it would be interesting to see how he's grown, how both of these guys have grown, and see that rematch too, because it would be such a huge fight, even if you can get it in Hawaii. I don't know if they've done an event in Hawaii, but Max Holloway has been clamoring for an event in Hawaii. If they do that there, it would be huge for him. But getting into what we're going to see next, how do you think Dustin Poirier has to fight to win this fight?
Well, I already said, if they're going to change, um, their dispositions from the last time that they fought or before the last time that they fought, Dustin Poirier is going to it cannot go back to that same guy. He cannot be the aggressor once again. He has to be the more technical Dustin Poirier, the one that we saw against Justin Gaethje. Keep those check kicks coming, check him with kicks, check him with knees, box him, and try to take him a little bit into deeper waters, test his cardio. Don't be the aggressor. Don't be that guy that actually gets caught on a counterpunch because that's what Conor wants to do. Don't make it easy for Conor. Be technical, box him.
Yeah, I agree. I think that Dustin really has to make this fight kind of a little, like you said, technical, but he has to make it a little dirty. He has to engage in the clinch a little bit more. I would want to see him really try to take this fight to the ground in the earlier rounds, and see him be able to get some top position and some control time, because we know that Conor finishes a lot of his fights early. So if Dustin's able to take him down and tire him out and take him past the first two rounds, where we've seen him tire out a little bit versus, let's say, a Nate Diaz or versus a Khabib, and he gets submitted in these later rounds. I think that's something Dustin might want to employ in this fight is really a takedown strategy and maybe even try to get into a submission strategy, because he does have 7 wins by submission. Poirier is a good on the floor as well, and Conor's only losses have come by submission. So it'd be interesting to see if Dustin able to do that. But getting into some of the things some of our viewers were saying, do you think Dustin Poirier is nervous for this fight?
Yeah, I don't think you get over what happened, that easily. Okay, I think he knows, and I think he's conscious of it. He's conscious. Okay, if I leave a right hand out there too long, I can catch a straight left, and it could end the fight. He's thinking about all those things because it happened to him. So he may be a different fighter nowadays, but when he gets into that octagon, he's going to look across the octagon. He's going to say, okay, this is the guy that did catch me with that straight. I believe it was a straight right? That dropped him, and then
it was it was a right overhead, the top of close to the back of the ear that put him down. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's gonna remember that, and you never really get over that. I don't think you do. The only way you get over that is when they raise your hand at the end of the fight, and they say you're the winner.
Yeah, there's definitely for sure an anxiety for Dustin Poirier, but I think that's anybody that's facing Conor McGregor, because you're taking on the king of the sport. You know what I mean? You're taking on Michael Jordan, so it's going to be nerve wracking for him to go in there. But I think Dustin is somebody, they call him the Diamond for a reason, because he can handle the pressure. So I think Dustin can come in, and I think he can handle himself. So how do you think McGregor has to fight to win this fight? What do you think he has to do?
Well, this is where the fight could get interesting, and it could get boring. To be completely honest with you. Because I said they have to switch roles. Like Conor used to be the counterpuncher and Dustin used to hunt. And then Dustin actually got on this next little streak, becoming more of a counterpuncher, more of a technical fighter. And now Conor McGregor's more of a hunter. At least, judging by his last couple fights, right? Because he tends to come a little bit more forward. He's going to have to somehow induce. He's going to have to fight the same fight that I just said Dustin Poirier has to make Conor fight. He has to induce exchanges, and he has to counter off of those exchanges, and that'll win him the fight, because Conor McGregor is still the best counterpuncher in the sport. So if he can induce Dustin Poirier to trade with him in the center of the octagon, and counter off of him and keep that rhythm going, he could take him out like in the second, third round. He could catch him with something, and you're going to see the same result as you saw before.
Yeah, I agree. I think the main thing that Conor has to do is, like you said, set up the engages that he wants to get into. You know what I mean? I think he's going to have to be on the front foot and have Dustin Poirier backing up, just being aware of that left hand. You know what I mean? Making sure that he has that left hand there, because it's not really the punches that'll keep where they're going. It's the fear of the punches that makes the direction of the fighters go. So it's really Conor has to have that left hand threatening with him. They're both southpaws, so we'll see these guys both come out. You know, they both are able to switch stances and really influence how they want the other one to move in the cage. So Conor's going to have to come in. He's going to have to influence him to move towards his left hand and really try to get that power punch down. Now, what he's also going to have to do is try to circle out of the clinch engages. You know what I mean? Try not to get caught in the clinch and get tired down early, or get taken down, because we know that's where McGregor has the most trouble, is when he's taken down. So I think if he's able to keep this fight standing and he's able to keep it his distance and manage the footwork he wants to do, I think he'll get the win from this one. So moving on to the predictions, who do you think actually employs their game plan and does it this Saturday night?
Well, it's going to be interesting to see who can employ their game plan, right? But I think that Conor McGregor, and it's interesting that I have the same game plan for both guys, right? Like like if I'm in either corner, I'm telling them the same thing. You know, don't be the aggressor. You sit back. You know, induce exchanges. Use feints to induce a punch. Then punch off of those cues. I think Conor McGregor, and it's weird that I'm going to say this, but I think his fight with Floyd Mayweather, I think he learned a lot, because his game plan was to paw at Mayweather, close the distance at Mayweather, and try to induce hooks so he could counter off of it and just try to catch him with one punch. Yeah, and it's obvious when you watch that fight, that's exactly what he was trying to do. Easier said than done against the best defensive fighter in the history of the sport, right? But that's exactly what he has to do against Dustin Poirier. Paw at him. You're not going to throw hard punches. You're going to paw at him. You're going to try to touch him. You're going to use a lot of feints. And you're trying to get Dustin Poirier to commit to a combination. And once he does commit, you bring your own and you bring it hard. And I think Conor McGregor makes that magic once again. I think we're in for a good fight, because I think they'll start off technical, and then, well, I don't know if there's going to be, I don't know if people are going to hear any boos or anything, but they're going to sense a lull in the action, and the action's going to pick up. I say Conor catches Dustin Poirier with a straight left in the third, and it ends it there.
Okay, sounds good. And I'm going to go ahead and take the other side. I think Dustin Poirier has grown up, like you said, how Conor's grown up in his fights against Mayweather. I think Dustin has grown up a lot as well, and he's become a more complete fighter, and he understands how to take less damage, or he's trying to understand how to take less damage in these fights. So I think Dustin comes out. I think he engages in a clinch-heavy situation where he's going to try to close that distance so Conor can't generate that leverage. Make it really close. And really just try to press him up against the cage, tire him out early in the fight, and then towards later in the fight, he'll start piecing him up when Conor's slowing down a little bit, and that's how Dustin will get it in. I want to think that he would take a decision, but Conor doesn't really lose decisions, so I'm going to go ahead and say Dustin takes him down in the fourth or fifth round, and he gets a submission. He has 7 wins by submission, so I'm going to say out there, I'm going to say Dustin gets it by submission. Now, do you think either of these guys can do enough to impress Khabib to bring him back?
No, I think Khabib is a man of his word. I think I really do believe him when he says that he really is retired. Now fighters never really retire. It's just they run out of opponents. I think Khabib's going to need something that excites him, and I do not see it this Saturday night. Neither one of these guys is something that will excite Khabib, mainly because Khabib has already beaten both of these guys. So I don't see either one of these guys making a great match for Khabib going
Yeah,
forward.
I don't really see the point of either of these guys being the fight that Khabib does for his last fight. You know what I mean?
Mm,
The one we would have maybe wanted to see was GSP, which we know probably isn't going to happen. We want to see
no.
Tony, but after his loss against Oliveira, that's probably not going to happen. So it really begs the question, why would he come back? And it would really have to be something extremely spectacular for him to come back. And I agree with you. I don't think he's going to come back. I think he's really done. I feel like, Dana White's pressuring him to come back just because, Dana White obviously wants the best thing for business, which is want him to fight. But I don't think they'll do enough. I think it'll be a close fight, but I think Dustin gets it done later in the fight, but Khabib stays retired. Now, moving on to the co-main event, we do have quite of a bit of a banger. We have Dan the Hangman Hooker taking on Michael Chandler, who's coming in, making his UFC debut after spending a long time in Bellator, three separate Bellator stints as champion. How do you feel like? Do you feel like he's making his debut a little too late in his career?
I believe he's making his debut against the wrong opponent. I'll tell you that right now. So yeah, you could say that, but he was, he was an exciting fighter at Bellator. A lot of headline fights. Uh, I didn't like his. I know he dispatched Benson Henderson, but Benson Henderson is as done as you can get. And I didn't think it was a worthy opponent. I think it was a worthy fight to make. So yeah, I don't like him in this one against not against Dan Hooker.
Yeah, no, I think definitely it's a little too late for him to come in the UFC. And he talks about wanting to be, a champion in this division and in the UFC. I think at 34 years old, with guys like Gaethje, up and comers like Dan Hooker and Oliveira, Dustin and Conor, you're in the toughest the division in the UFC, and you're on the back end of your career. He's fought Eddie Alvarez, he fought Benson Henderson. I think he fought Benson Henderson twice. That second fight was, like you said, Hendo was done. You know what I mean? He wasn't
Yeah,
anything at the second fight. The first fight was a little bit closer, but I'd have to agree with you. Dan Hooker's coming in. This isn't the matchup that you want to see Michael Chandler take against somebody who's so long. He's taking on a guy that's 4 inches taller than him. How do you
yeah.
think that height advantage and that reach advantage is going to help Dan Hooker?
Well, watching both of these guys fight, Michael Chandler is one of these guys that likes to get low and he likes to get under your punches and try to bring the fight to your chest, right? And Dan Hooker's a guy that can't stay on the balls of his feet. Keep moving and keep punching down on you and win a decision that way. So I think Dan Hooker has more tricks in his bag to defeat a guy like Michael Chandler than Michael Chandler has to upset a guy like Dan Hooker.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like the length is going to be really hard for Chandler to overcome just because we know Hooker has those knees and he has those elbows and he has
Mm-hmm.
multiple ways to defend takedowns and multiple ways to keep guys at bay. He fights really long, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I feel that length really is going to help him in this fight. Now,
Yeah, Dan
Chandler,
Hooker fights. Yeah, like you said, Dan Hooker fights long and lean and with a jab, while Michael Chandler likes to get into your chest and he's always crouching. He's always making himself small. You know what that means?
that's
He
a
could
knee.
catch a knee. He could catch a kick, and that thing could end really, really early.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, when we're getting down to predictions, we'll break down how we think that fight's going to go. But I think a knee down the middle might be what's coming for Michael Chandler. So, he does like to come in and he likes, like you said, he likes to get low. And he does have a takedown offense. He's able to
Mm.
take you down, ground and pound you. That's part of his offensive plan. Do you feel like he's going to employ that wrestling game plan? Or do you think he wants to come out to the UFC, make a statement, and try to stand up with Dan Hooker?
He better bring that rest. He better bring that takedown offense because I think that's the only way he can win this fight. I think he can win this fight making it ugly and storing points away with the judges. Win a decision, and if people say you're boring but you get the W, you get the W. But if what would you rather be? You rather be boring and win a tight decision, or be really really exciting and get knocked out in the beginning of the second round?
Aspen,
So
Aspirin that.
exactly. So yeah, I would say yeah, he's gonna have to. I think it's his only hope. I really don't see the scenario where he stands up with Dan Hooker and is successful.
Yeah, so you kind of spoke on his game plan. So getting to how we think Chandler's going to win, he's really going to have to use that offensive wrestling. If he
Mhm.
stands up with Dan Hooker's going to piece him apart. He's going to keep him long. He's good in the clinch as well. He's really strong, and unless Chandler takes him down in 2 of the 3 rounds and grounds and pounds him and keeps him on the floor for a significant time and then also inflicts serious damage on him, I think this is a fight where Dan Hooker can come in and really do a lot of damage. So Michael Chandler is going to have to come in and take him down and really just wear on him and make this fight a dog fight. Not something that's, like you said, maybe not the most exciting fight, but it'll get him the win. Now, moving on to Dan Hooker, how do you think he wins this fight?
I think you don't have to extend yourself. You don't have to really be all that exciting. So, just use your jab, stay behind your jab, and everything else is going to come for you. Because if he's going to actually try to fight the same way he's fought and the way he's fought at Bellator, and he's going to actually fight you trying to get into your chest, then you employ your kicks. And if you employ your kicks right up the middle, use your knees, and then you can be aggressive. Because if you build an offense off of knees up the middle and jabs, your opponent really has little to no hope to beat you.
Yeah, there's no way for you to really make that entrance on a double leg or single leg because there's just so
Mm,
many weapons coming at you. That jab will keep
mm,
you at distance, and if you try to go under that jab, the knee is right there.
yeah.
So like you said, Hooker's gonna have to just fight long. He's gonna have to not overextend himself to allow himself to get really close. If he misses a shot, allowing Chandler to get a takedown. But who do you think comes out and gets this dub?
I think Dan Hooker wins this. I think Michael Chandler's going to be pretty conscious of those knees and those kicks up the middle. So I think he won't dispatch him early. I think Michael Chandler will have some moments, but I think Dan Hooker. I'm not going to call it. I'm it's not boring when these guys are going to actually press the action. But I think Dan Hooker wins an unimpressive decision. Let's just say a decision where he wins it rather comfortably.
Yeah, I'd agree with you on that. I think this is going to be a little bit of an exciting fight. I think Chandler's going to want to come in and he's going to want to stand up for a little bit. But once he feels one or two of those heavy shots, I think that's when he's going to try to take it down, and then the fight will slow down a little bit. But I think this is a fight where we're going to see Dan Hooker really do a lot of damage because if Chandler's really coming in motivated, he's both of these guys are quote unquote cocky guys, which you need for the sport. But I think he's going to try to stand up with him a little bit, and then he'll get hurt and going down to the fight. I'm going to say a second round knockout. I think Dan Hooker is going to get him with one of those knees up the middle. And before we move on to the next part of the show, I want to say thanks to Alex M for that super chat. We appreciate you coming in and watching with us. But getting into the rest of this fight, we want to get into a couple of these undercard fights that you might want to keep an eye on. There's with the Conor fights, they usually build them top heavy. So, there's a little bit spotty fights going down. So one of the fights we want to get into, Matt the Steamroller Frivola is taking on Otman the Bulldozer at Zaitar. Zaitar is coming in off of two straight knockouts, and Frivola is coming in with a little bit more of a heavy ground game. Who do you think gets that win?
Well, I think if we're going to talk about who's actually in the ascension, and who's actually been in a little bit tougher battles, Favola's been in a couple of like really knockdown dragouts the last two times out, and Ottman, he has a striking game going so well right now that I got to think that it's just going to continue one more time.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. He's on a hot streak as far as getting those knockouts out, and the way Dana White wants to always build his stars up is have him knock off a couple of guys that are kind of on the way down. That match them up pretty well. So I have to agree with you. I think Izadar comes out. I think he knocks him out. I think he gets a pretty good knockout where it'll thrust him into higher in the division. Moving on to the next fight. This is the fight where I think is the sleeper of the night. We have Arman Sirkarian taking on Nazarat Hakparast. Who do you think gets to win that fight?
Hmm. I really have no opinion on that fight. It's so tight, you know. Man, I really have no opinion on that fight.
Yeah, I mean,
Although I have seen Sakaran fight before, I have really no opinion on that fight. It's as pick 'em as you can get, really.
yeah, I'd have to agree with you. And I think Nazarat's going to come out. I think he's going to get a win. If you look at the striking, he averages about 5 compared to 3 for Sukrian. A little bit better on the percentage. He does take a little bit more damage where he'll absorb some shots to give it, but he's heavy. His hands are really really heavy. I think he's coming in with a couple of straight knockouts as well. So I think this is a sleeper for fight of the night. And getting on to Alex, who commented, Chandler is a good sleeper pick because of his takedown game. So if he's able
Mhm.
to get a takedown and get it into the clinch exchanges, he can win this fight. But for me, I think Hooker's going to come in and use his length and get that win. And the last fight we want to take a look at, that's on the undercard. We're seeing Khalil Roundtree take on Marcin Prachnio. Who do you think wins that fight?
Roundtree, I'm a big fan of his. I think it's one of those cases where it could be his time. He could be working toward bigger events, bigger fights going forward. So yeah, I got Roundtree in that one.
Yeah, I think there's a bias where when you watch somebody fight on the first time you ever watch fighting, you'll always remember that guy. And Roundtree got a win on one of the first cards that I've ever watched. So his name is always stuck in my head. You know, he went to Thailand to learn a little bit more Muay Thai and get a little bit better at that. So I think he'll come out and I think he'll show that he has a complete game in getting onto the welt and get on to get a dub in this one. Now, are there any other fights that you see in this card that you think that might stick out a little bit?
Yeah, I'm excited for one in particular, and that's Juliana Pena and Sarah McMahon. I've always been a fan of Juliana. I don't think that she's a serious title contender, but she's a fun fighter to watch every time that she's in there. So I want to see her. She did lose her last fight. I thought she fought okay, but I would like to see her, get that career back and get back into the good graces of Dana White, get more fights on the main card. So Juliana Pena, Sarah McMahon, I think is a really interesting fight, very evenly matched. I'll be rooting for Juliana in that fight.
Yeah, and also Sarah McMahon is 40 years old, and she's coming in
Yeah.
and she's still fighting, which is really good to see. Now, getting on to Juliana, she's really well rounded. She has 3 wins by knockout, 3 wins by submission, 3 by decision, and McMahon is really more of a ground heavy fighter. You know, she'll take you down to the ground and she'll try to
Mm.
pin you there. So I could see really where we see maybe like one of these really fun exchanges on the ground because these female fighters are so much more flexible. They can just get these submissions in so much more in so much more of a variety of a way. So it'll be
Yeah,
fun to see if
and if you remember Juliana Pena from the Ultimate Fighter house, she had such advanced jiu-jitsu that she really hasn't used too much of it in the UFC. I'd like to see her, get back to some of that again, and maybe that's the way forward. The crazier things have happened where other fighters have had renaissances later on in their careers, and they actually get to a title fight. So I'll be rooting for Juliana in this one.
Yeah, and I mean she's only ranked number 6 right now, so she's still not that
Mm-hmm.
far. And especially in those women division, if you can make a quick, standout win, you can get a title shot a little bit expedited. Especially with the champions that we have with Amanda Nunes and Valentina Shevchenko, they're just looking for new
Yeah,
challenges.
but that's the
So
problem. The problem for Juliana Pena is who's at the top of the division. You know what I mean?
you're not getting
And
it done.
nobody's beating her.
Yeah.
Nobody is beating her. So yeah, but I'll be rooting. I'm going to be really interested in that fight. I'll be excited for that one.
Oh yeah, definitely. That's going to be a good fight. Moving on to the third fight, Jessica Eye versus Joanna Calderwood. Do you think who do you think wins that fight?
Well, I'm tempted to say Jessica. I didn't like the way she looked in her last fight, but I'm going to say that she sums it up once again and gets a win.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with you on that. We got the first fight of the pay per view. Marina Rodriguez taking on the rising Amanda Ribas. Who do you think gets that one?
Oh, Amanda Ribas.
Yeah,
Everybody's, she's probably the next big thing as far as getting into the main cards. So absolutely, that should be a showcase for her.
yeah, for sure. And moving on to the second fight of the prelims, we have Brad Tavares taking on Antonio Carlos. Who do you think gets that one?
Brett Tavares. I think Brett Tavares is a guy who's. I remember watching him. I forgot I think what fight night it was that I watched him, but I was very impressed by him. And yeah, I'll take him. I'll take him in this fight. Not much of an opinion though, but I do like Brett Tavares.
Yeah, he is a little bit of a better of a striker. I'm gonna go on the other side. I think Carlos is coming in. I think he's gonna be able to employ his ground game and take Brad Tavares down. And I think he gets this win. We spoke a couple of other fights. Moving on to the early prelims, any of those fights do you see that can be exciting?
Well, Nick Lentz, I've seen fight before. Other than that, this is just, I think this is card filler, really. Like, I haven't seen much of any of these other guys. Amir Albazi, I am interested in watching him fight. So I guess that's the headliner in the early prelims, which I believe should be starting at what time? 6:15, which is awesome on a Saturday. We're
Yeah.
actually going to get a late start to the main card, which is great.
Yeah, for sure. It's nice to have one of those late cards. That, I think we had. I mean, what was it? Yesterday we had a card start at 9 a.m.
Yeah.
and then last weekend we had one start at 12 p.m. So it was
Yeah, I
nice
was
to see.
sitting in my office and I was like, why is everybody talking about UFC all of a sudden on Twitter? And I'm like, oh yeah, Magny is fighting at 9 o'clock in the morning. Which what is that about?
Yeah,
Like,
I mean,
you
I
know,
think it was just
UFC
prime time
fights
right
with my
away.
coffee. Like, I don't get that.
Yeah, that was tough to have. I mean, the main event ended up being around 3 o'clock, so it ended up around that time. But that main event was was pretty boring. You know, it was just all Michael Chiesa coming and just laying on him. But obviously, good grappling exchanges. It's going to be fun to see him maybe take on like a
Mm.
Tyron Woodley or a Stephen Wonderboy Thompson rising up in the 170-pound division. But you know, these early fights, I like these late night fights getting down later. Now, moving on to some other combat sports in the world. Alf, what do you have announced that's coming up soon?
Well, I think this is a great announcement. It was announced yesterday that Canelo Alvarez is fighting his last fight for DAZN. Remember, he was going to sue his way out of his contract. They came out. They came to an amicable breakup. Let's just say he's going to fight one last time. He's going to fight a mandatory against somebody called Abney Yildirim. Okay, Abney Yildirim. I saw him fight against Andre Durrell. Anthony Durrell. I mean, not good. Okay, like this is a complete setup. But here's the interesting part. Canelo Alvarez is defending his title at Hard Rock Stadium here in Miami. So you get to see the champ, the pay-per-view king, in your own backyard. Tickets will go on sale this next week, so be on the lookout for that. Of course, it's going to be a limited engagement. They're not going to put 50,000 people in there, so I'd be on the lookout for that. It's going to be interesting. Canelo should kill at this guy and within 3 or 4 rounds. That's not going to be a problem, you know. So, but it's going to be interesting. You get to see Canelo Alvarez, and the word is that Canelo Alvarez is going to take on all comers as soon as he gets out of the zone contract, and it's going to be a very eventful 2021 for
Yeah,
Canelo Alvarez.
yeah. I mean, honestly, just the sports combat world overall has just exploded. There's just so many fights coming out right now. There's a lot of young contenders coming up. You know, Canelo's coming back next month. They also announced yesterday, I think they finalized the Kamaru Usman versus Gilbert Burns fight, which is going to be next month, which is going to be great. Teammate versus teammate. You know, Dan Hooker beat Gilbert Burns, who trained with Usman and Michael Chandler. So that's a little, love square they got going on over there, whatever that is. So we got
Yeah,
a couple of
and
great fights coming up.
not only that, but the word is that Ryan Garcia, Tank Davis, is going to happen, and it's going to happen sooner rather than later. So that's fun, also.
Yeah, man. So we got a lot of fights coming up, a lot of great fights as far as boxing, a lot of great fights as far as UFC. Obviously, keep it locked right here. Fight Week on 5. We got Alpha Artiaga. I'm your host, Jonathan Ramlakan. I want to thank all you guys for coming. Thank you, David. Thank you, Alex. All you guys who commented. I appreciate you guys. And I hope you guys have a great one and enjoy that Conor fight Saturday night.